Welcome back, boys and girls. Okay, like we said, we're covering texture. Our artist inspiration is Vincent van Gogh, and he was a postmodernist. We will cover postmodernism later, and we will see more about his life next class. But today, I want to cover texture, explain a little bit. First, remember in class we always do terms that we can use. Some terms for texture. We have two categories, two groups. One is 3D, which is the actual texture that you can touch and feel, right? And then there's the visual, 2D, more like patterns that are used to convey, to make you believe that that texture is there when actually whatever you touch is flat. So there's two groups. If you were to refer to actual texture when you touch it, you could say that it's bumpy, that it's grainy, pebbly, spiky, prickly, rough, slick, smooth, soft, velvety, wiry. These are words that you can use when referring to actual texture. Then 2D, or the visual, right? It's usually patterns that are created by lines, like waves, right? So wavy texture. Some shapes that are repeated in patterns, such as, I don't know, squares, triangles, shapes that repeat, shells, octagons, diamond. So they repeat and they form, like squares would form checkerboards or bricks, rectangles, right? Then you have shells. The diamonds could look like wiry. There's different ones that keep repeating, and the patterns repeat and it looks like a texture. Okay, let me show you some images to explain what I mean by that. But in real life, when you are talking about actual texture, you could see wood, and you could try to emulate it with patterns of lines. Fur, you could touch it if it's 3D, or you could try to draw it and have it look like grass, rocks, leaves. You could touch it, or you can do different lines or shapes to emulate, to make it look like it has texture. Okay, so yes, texture is the surface quality or feel of an object, and it could be smooth, rough, soft, etc., like I explained. So there's textures in nature, like I said, wiry, wood, rocks. These are actual ones that you could touch, unless it was a picture, but leaves, tree bark. Here you could say spiky or pebbly or rough. Here, spiky or prickly, furry, right? And then the artificial ones that usually are with patterns, like you see the woven here, right? These are shapes or lines that repeat. These are artificial because they're not from nature. But if you were to touch this, it's woven. It's artificial texture, but it is texture that you touch and you can feel. You could say this is bumpy, slick, rough, concrete, right? Okay, so textures, tactile texture is the actual 3D feel of the texture. Tactile means touch. Painters like Van Gogh, who is our artist inspiration, can use sand. He did use sand in his paintings to get that texture on the paintings, but a lot of the paintings you can't actually touch it because they won't let you. But it even though he used pattern to recreate those textures and colors, different tones and stuff, He also did the thick brush strokes where if you were to feel it, you could feel the bumps and the sand and the different textures within the paint. So the visual textures refers to the illusion of the surface texture. It is what tactile texture looks like. So it's 2D, it's a 2D surface, so it's flat. So the textures you see in the photograph are visual textures, no matter how rough objects in the photograph look. The surface of the photograph, it's smooth or flat. So yeah, even though you see the picture, it's flat, or the painting where you could see the pattern of a tree bark, but when you touch it, it's completely flat. Okay, in nature you could see both. So you could see nature tactile and nature visual. Like the giraffe, you know that it's well, it's not that smooth. It still has fur, but yeah. Here you see texture within when you touch it, but actually these textures are not rising, so it's flat. Here, right, spiky. Then there is artificial tactile and artificial visual. So this is artificial. I can't say that. Artificial. And it's visual. It's 2D. And then you have 3D that it's still artificial. You can't find it in nature, but it's tactile. So you can touch it and it's not smooth. And then here you have tactile or visual. So visual, tactile, texture, textile. Forgive me. Tactile, texture. Yes. Okay, here, this would be visual, and this would be tactile. And here too. Tactile. What is that? Visual. Yes. Here the same. Here you're doing visual. You're recreating with patterns, lines, shapes, repetition, right? Repeating. And here, when you touch it, you can feel that it's not smooth. These, they would be smooth if you were to touch them. Some artists that use patterns and shapes to do texture. And then this is the painting that we saw last week and that I asked you to find the name of, which is Room in Arles by Vincent van Gogh. And here you could see, even though if you were to touch it, you could feel all the paint brush strokes and the sand and all of that. But here you could see the woven pattern here. You could see the pattern here with the imitating wood, the roughness of the floor, right? The difference between the slick or more smooth fabric texture and the fabric texture here, which feels more rough, right? There's other artists, of course. This would be more of a 2D, so that is the difference of more realistic actual texture and more of a visual. This is Picasso, and he used a lot of repetition with lines and shapes to recreate that texture. Why do you forget to use texture? I don't know, but it's really important. Actually, to let you know, texture is, to me, well, it's my favorite. To be honest, it's my favorite. You guys know that I love pottery, and clay is my favorite medium, and texture, it's a must. So your challenge is to create an artwork using texture. So you could do it with lines, shapes, dots. Here you can use lines, right? And we have done this to emulate 3D coming out, but you could do it with lines. Pretty cool. Zigzag lines. I remember when we covered lines, hatching, cross hatching. We remember all of those line names. We could use line to create texture. If you want to choose that, you could do it with that. So you're going to choose one. You could do texture by doing text. Look how cool. Right? How about if you were to grab paper and do folding paper? Here, you could glue it if you have paper, whatever you can find, but I want you to try it. So monotyping. What is monotyping? Is a type of printmaking where you take a solid object and you paint on it, and then you take a paper and you print it. So you put the paper on top of whatever you painted, and this is what you get. Okay, you could do dotting, right? Or dripping. You could rub. So if you have a coin, if you have a leaf, you could take a pencil and scratch the surface of the paper, and or a wall, even a wall. It will show up. You could create a composition or just the textures. I would love to see what you can come up with. Stamping. Anything you could find, and if you have paint, watercolor, or even materials you can find in the kitchen, you could take and recreate that. You could take a vegetable. You could grab a rock and put some fabric on it and stamp, okay? And that will, see? Do you see that texture there? Scraps, scratching. You could do that too. Oh, this is so much fun. So you put water, and then you put the paint on, and then you take the paper, and the paint will stick to the paper. Yeah, really fun. Photocopy, well, that's not available right now, but you could do tactile collage, where you could find things in the kitchen or any craft materials that you have, and you can use that. Or use collage, cut up whatever you have, paper, and or here you could do photos. So it could be a collage with photos too. Okay, texture, texture, texture. I believe we have learned a lot today about textures. If you forgot some of those terms, I know that in class we say it out loud and we sing it, and we have it visually there. If you forget, it's okay. You can play this again to kind of remember those terms if you need to use them. For this homework, you won't need it, but I do want you to try to do all of these, or not all of this. You're going to choose one out of all of these. So picture collage, tactile collage, not the, this, the waterborne, the scratching, stamping, rubbed, dripping, dotting, monotyping, the folding paper, the text, or, lines. But I want you to really have fun with it, and if you can, upload the picture so I can see it. But it's optional. You don't have to, okay? I just want you to have extra fun with texture. It's my favorite, and I hope it becomes your favorite too, out of the elements of art, okay? And next class, remember, we will cover Vincent van Gogh, who's an artist inspiration, word of the month, post-impressionism, and we will cover that later, okay? Miss you, love you,